Good morning, respected chairpersons and dear colleagues. So, empirical IVF.
A brief introduction, sir. Dr. Balasaheb Kharbade is a consultant infertility and IVF specialist from Yashoda Fertility and IVF Center. And sir, please.
Thank you, madam, for kind introduction. So, empirical IVF, a novel treatment for recurrent pregnancy loss. Seems very novel and easy, but it's not easy. So, in upcoming slides and at the end of the presentation, we'll get an insight how to use this IVF technology to treat our patients of recurrent pregnancy loss. So studies evaluating the value of IVF in women with recurrent pregnancy loss have yielded mixed results. Embryos of women with unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss have higher incidence of aneuploidy for chromosomes 13, 16, 18, 21, 22, X and Y than embryos obtained from healthy women. In a retrospective cohort study of 300 women with RPL, the pregnancy, live birth and miscarriage rates were similar for women who underwent IVF with PGS and women who elected expectant management. Of the 168 retrievals performed, 38 cycles were cancelled because of the poor embryo yield or quality. Of the 130 completed PGS cycles, 103 yielded at least one euploid embryos. So I am presenting these few articles to you so that we'll get an insight how the IVF helps in the recurrent pregnancy loss patients. So this is again a study in human reproduction. IVF for unexplained recurrent abortion, a pilot study. So the aim was to determine the effectiveness of IVF ET for patients with unexplained habitual abortion. It was a prospective observational study. So out of 12 women, 8 women in the group 1 became pregnant. All of them had viable pregnancies. And in group 2, which was the expectant group, in which out of 8, 3 ended in the abortion. So their conclusion was IVF and ET may be a newer therapeutic approach for unexplained recurrent miscarriage. This is again a study in human reproduction. Aim was to intend to treat analysis of IVF and pre-implantation genetic screening versus expectant management in patients with recurrent pregnancy loss. So again it was a retrospective cohort study of 300 RPL patients. And they have got these results. So I'm not going into details of the statistics. So these are the wide implications of the findings. Success rate with PGS are limited by the high incidence of cycles that intend but cancel PGS or cycles that do not reach the transpose. So this is a very important limitation of PGS studies. Counseling RPL patients on their treatment options should include not only success rate with PGS per haploid embryos transferred, but also live birth rate per increased PGS cycle. Furthermore, patients who express an urgency to conceive should be counseled that PGS may not accelerate their time to conception. So the counseling part should be very clear. Sometimes it happens that we advise some treatment and that is costly. The patient seeks or expects that she will get immediately pregnant. So this is again a study in fertility sterility. IVF plus PGD in patients with recurrent miscarriage and analysis of chromosomal abnormalities in human pre-implantation embryos. So it was a prospective control study and intervention done was IVF embryo culture for 72 hours, blastomere biopsy, analysis of chromosome 13, 16, 18, 21, 22, XY with the use of fluorescent in situ hybridization. and main outcome measured was numerical chromosomal abnormalities in human embryos. So 66 embryos from patients with recurrent miscarriages were compared with 62 embryos from young patients and 41 embryos from older patients. There was significant increase in the rate of abnormal embryos in the patients with recurrent miscarriages and the older patients compared with the controls. Abnormalities in most of the chromosomes studied were higher in the recurrent miscarriage group than in the control group, especially those affecting the chromosome 13. So this is a chart showing the result of the study. So frequency of abnormality in each chromosome in the three groups. So you can see that there are more chromosomal abnormalities in the miscarriage group, then chronologically in the older patient group, and then least were in the control groups. So there was an increase in numerical chromosomal abnormalities in the pre-implantation embryos from women with recurrent miscarriage that could be the cause of infertility in many couples with unexplained recurrent pregnancy loss. The use of IVF in such circumstances may be indicated if successful PGD is added to the procedure. So this is again a study in fertility sterility, the outcome of IVF in unexplained habitual abortus concurrent with secondary infertility. So again it was a controlled clinical study, and the results, the mean number of oocyte fertilization and embryos was higher in the abortus compared with the controls. Morphology of the transferred embryos was similar in both groups, though in general better embryo quality developed in the abortus group. Pregnancy rate were similar in both groups. Pregnancy outcomes of the habitual aborting patients in IVF-ET remained unsuccessful as before treatment, 50% abortion compared with the only 8% abortion rate in the controls. So habitual abortus performance at early stages of IVF-ET is better compared with their controls. Despite similar pregnancy rates in IVF-ET cycles, their pregnancy outcomes after IVF-ET is unsuccessful as before IVF-ET. So this is again another study. Increased chromosome abnormalities in human pre-implantation embryos with IVF patients in recurrent miscarriages. So coming to the oocyte donation, when our conventional methods of treating a recurrent pregnancy loss patients failed, and the patient is frustrated and the obstetrician is also frustrated. Like I remember one patient came to my OPD and she was crying that a senior gynecologist has told me that मराठीत ती बोलली मला की मला मॅडमनी सांगितले की तू काही शेळी मेंढी आहेस का की तुला 7-8 अबॉर्शन झालेस आणि आणखी तू परत ट्राय करणार आहेस. So for such patients a very good tool, that oocyte donation is a very good tool. Poor quality oocyte may be responsible for 25% pregnancy losses. Ovum donation can overcome this problem and has been associated with a live birth rate of 88% in women with RPL. The success of ovum donation, even when the male partner's sperm is utilized for fertilization, suggests the absence of a significant paternal contribution to the etiology of the RPL. And again, finally, when anything is not working, we change the gametes, we use the many drugs, we change both gametes, then also it's not working, then there is something very faulty in the recipient's uterus, and then we can opt for a gestational carrier. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Balasaheb. That was a lucid presentation. So what you would suggest, that if there is a patient coming for secondary infertility with recurrent pregnancy losses, you would suggest that all of them should go for PGDA and then IVF embryo transfer?
No, madam.
So what is your take-home message at the end of the talk?
My take-home message is that we should evaluate thoroughly the patient for APLA syndrome. Then we should correct any anatomical abnormalities if it is found in the uterus. then we should correct any hormonal imbalance of the patient. And when we have evaluated the patient, we are not finding anything, then we can go for oocyte donation IVFET. Like.
And you said one statement that the paternal factors are not responsible. I beg to differ, because if the patient comes at 45 saying that her son is died in an accident now and she wants a baby, whether it's a girl or a boy, so then at the age of, if her husband is 50 years old, you will do a routine semen analysis or do a DNA fragmentation index also?
We do a routine semen analysis, and as a protocol in all IVF patients, we do a DNA fragmentation of all the patients.
So then you cannot say that paternal factors are not there. So
Yes,
there
yes,
could be
but
some
it-
paternal factors also.
Yes, it's
Thank
it's
you.
not in all the cases.
Some cases, of course.
Some cases, yes.
Thank you.